Training camp is over for the Carolina Panthers, and we are now turning our attention to the Jets preseason game. Let's talk about it. What is going on, Panthers Nation? Carolina Dad here, your host of the two Growls One Roar podcast. Folks, I'm so close to just saying my name because it's out in the open now. If you do your research, you'll be able to find it, but I'll continue to use Carolina Dad. Anyways, you don't care about that. Let's talk about football in the Carolinas as the Jets and Carolina Panthers close out training camp here. Dunzo, 15 practices in the books in Uptown. The move from Wofford in Spartanburg, South Carolina, up to Charlotte in Uptown. The move is complete. And I will tell you, one, always going to be a fan of Wofford and Spartanburg, and having it in South Carolina. Excluding all that, fantastic training camp from what I saw. We only got to make it to one practice, but everything that we saw during the process with fans and the experience and all the things that surrounded it, I would give it an A plus. And I'm running a poll right now to get everyone's final opinion. Unfortunately, anyone can vote on the poll, so we may have non-Panthers fans, we may have people who did not even attend practice giving us a vote. But I do think it's going to fall in that A to B range. And some people saying, well, I didn't experience Wofford, so I'm not going to vote based off of what I know in Charlotte. But it does feel like a very successful training camp. And as we talk about training camp, it was the last open practice. Now, coaches will still tell you that we're in training camp mode, even though it's not open to the public. Panthers will now move on to facing the New York Jets, who came into town again for that joint practice on Saturday, 7 primetime, Bank of America Stadium. Then we turn our attention to the Buffalo Bills, closing out the final preseason game. And then it's the regular season, folks, as we, get ready for the New Orleans Saints. Lots of football to be talked about. Now, today's episode is going to be very short. Well, shorter, I should say. I've got so many things I'd like to discuss and get through, but I got to condense this because I want to get this out as quickly as possible. I'll have my post-game reaction episode coming on Sunday, is my guess, timing-wise. We'll do the same thing that I did last time, do a little bit of film breakdown. I highly recommend, if you're not following me on X, that you follow me, because that's where I will be exclusively streaming due to YouTube's restrictions on content and looking at film and, just those worlds intermingling. I'm not going to post that stuff on there. So we're going to stream exclusively on Facebook, X, and then Instagram, not on YouTube. Now, I will post the breakdown portion on YouTube as an episode for you to go back and watch. So just keep that in mind. Now, here we go. Let's talk about it. Here's the thing. I, a lot of times, get on this show and I get very hyper-focused just because it's the nature of me learning and growing and wanting to know about the team and wanting to report on the news. I get very focused on those things. I get tactical. I go back, I read an article, watch a press conference, I clip it, I read it and watch it again, and then we talk about it on here. I dissect what I'm seeing from the roster standpoint. I dissect what I'm seeing here, there. A lot of times, though, I don't just sit back and give you the general barbershop sports talk that this is. And that's exactly what I'm going to be doing today as we take a look back at really the whole training camp, but focused on the joint practice. There's been so much talk about Bryce Young in this offseason. There are quite a few folks within the Carolina fan base that just don't want him to succeed for whatever reason. I mean, I don't know if it's because you liked CJ Stroud so much, you think he's too small, you think he's not capable, you haven't seen this or that, you just want to be right, that he's a bust, and you want the Carolina Panthers to stink. I don't get it. I don't understand why you want to root for a team and at least not pull for the players that are on there. We don't have a choice. We are not the GM. We don't get to pick. Go pick another team. It's that simple. Go root for the Kansas City Chiefs, the Baltimore Ravens, the Buffalo Bills. Heck, go across town to the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta Falcons, speaking of those folks in the NFC South, Judon, Simmons, they are stacking up that defense. on top of what we know they've already renovated in the offseason, they're going to be a scary team, at least on paper. We'll see if they can produce. But get back. Let's get focused here. And so there's been a lot of talk about Bryce Young. Is he going to be successful? Was everything that we saw last year who he's going to be as an NFL quarterback? And throughout camp, we've seen spurts, but then we've seen complaints. Oh, we're not throwing enough deep balls. We're not doing this. Bryce Young's not looking good here. Or he had a bad day, or he threw interceptions to our own defense. That was the headline. People said, oh my gosh, he's been terrible, practicing terrible. I can't believe he's throwing a pick to Shy Tuttle. I can't believe he's throwing a pick to whoever else on the team. And people are tracking his stats. I can't get over that. Like, it seriously drives me crazy to hear some of the storylines that come out of the offseason and really into training camp now with tracking stats in preseason. Are you freaking kidding me? Not preseason games, preseason training camp. Like, what good is that? Sometimes I wish that we did not have access to all this stuff, that we had to just wait and see them in the preseason games, that we had to wait and see them in the season. I like it. I'm not going to say I don't want us to have none of it, but man, people just sit back and talk and talk and talk about the dumbest crap. Y'all know, if you follow my show, I do not get into the weeds of, I'll call it conspiracy theories of things that are just not true. I'm absolutely factual. Sure, I may mess up a name or I may mess up, pronouncing something every now and then. But when I'm going to talk to you about something or I'm going to give an opinion based off of something that I see, it's not going to be this made up, crazy conspiracy theory that, oh, yeah, the so and so and Nicole Teppers. And, I can't tell you how many weird things I see online on a daily basis, whether it's Reddit or X. I don't partake in that. I also don't gas up a lot of folks, man. Like, if you're expecting me to be the cheerleader on the sideline that continues to post day after day after day, gassing up anyone on this roster, it's not going to happen. I want the guys to succeed. I want the coaching staff to succeed. But at the same time, I'm going to keep it real, and I'm going to keep it as close to as real as possible to give you an educated opinion on football. What a rant that I did not plan on going down. That's just what we got to do, folks. Now let's talk about Bryce Young, because when we go back and look at last year, I talked about Hard Knocks. Bryce Young in his first year, Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers told Bryce Young to be gentle with himself. It was a tough year. Like, those words of wisdom way back a year ago. Yeah, I think Bryce definitely needed to be gentle with himself considering everything that happened here in the Carolinas. But a year later, I will tell you, a lot of folks probably coming into this joint practice, you go back and look at the injuries to the Carolina Panthers, and we can start with the wide receiver room. When you're really running the same group that we had last year, and Terrace Marshall, Mingo, Adam Thielen, Amir Smith-Marset, you're trotting those same guys out there, adding in a David Moore, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, this is probably not going to be a good day. Jets are a stout defense. Are we going to be able to see Bryce push the ball down the field? And then we start to see the clips, and we start to see the highlights. We start to see numerous touchdown throws. Bryce running in a touchdown. I know they don't hit the quarterback, but scrambling, getting in. An efficient offense, shots downfield. All the things that people said were not going to happen. And then to the flip side, guess what happened, folks? Aaron Rodgers, and I think other quarterbacks, because I don't think it was just Aaron Rodgers. When I saw the clip, when I saw an interception thrown, it was not Rodgers. So multiple interceptions thrown by the Jets to our defense. And all this time you've been saying, oh my gosh, Bryce Young throwing interceptions to our defense. I can't believe it. He's had 5 interceptions throughout training camp. Oh my gosh. Good grief, people. If you've not watched the other episode where I talk about not being worried about this, go watch it. And maybe if you haven't watched it, I'll tell you this right now. There's a lot of compounding factors into why these interceptions don't matter. Number one, they've been together, watching the same scheme for 3 or 4 weeks. And what I like to tell people is, if you played football, you understand what it's like going against your ones every single day. You know, like, this is even a scout team on the ones or a scout team on against the defense. You are going against it every day. And I'm going to tell you this, you're going to learn their tendencies because you play them. And so you have opportunities to make plays on the ball. And it's natural. And coaches maybe one day will say, oh, I don't really want you to shoot that gap. Like I know you can, and the ball's coming here. Like those things happen, folks. And then that's not to say that Bryce Young also is not just making mistakes, because he is, because we saw the clip of him throwing across the body, interception across the field, like, not good, right? I say all that to say, man, like everything's going to be okay. I just posted a stat last night. You want to hear about the Panthers and the rushing attack, and this is Dave Canales' identity. You want to know a fun fact? Last year, I looked back at the Tampa Bay offense with Dave Canales. How successful were they when they won in running the ball? So, did they run the ball a lot? Did they get in all of their wins, the 10 wins, which includes the playoff win? They averaged 106 yards per game. 106 yards per game. Do you want to know what they averaged in their losses? 72 yards. Difference of 34 rushing yards per game. Quite a significant jump. And I think in the losses, there was only one game where they amassed over 100 yards. So outside of that, it was a lot of honestly terrible games. And you got to think about the losing streak that Tampa Bay went on very early, right? Early losses, people worried after they started out hot and then they start to crumble. They stuck to the running game. And that is why I think Dave Canales is going to continue to do that, and why we've got all these running backs in here where we're going to see Chuba Hubbard, Miles Sanders, Raheem Blackshear, actually Mike Boone getting a little more touches than Raheem at this point. So the identity of this team is going to be established. Now, we also look at the offensive line, Austin Corbett holding up. To the flip side, quite a lot of scares happening right now with injuries. Now, I don't have the list in front of me, so I'm going off of memory, and there's a chance I'm going to miss some folks. But significant injuries are stacking up. One, Dane Jackson, who was slotted into being the starting cornerback opposite of J.C. Horn, going to miss some significant time. I would expect him to go into the PUP list. And so now you're looking at Jackson, a Boodle, a Jameson stepping up behind him to fill in that number 2 slot. You may also look at free agency, and a lot of folks still clamoring for Gilmore. On the offensive line front, Robert Hunt suffered a little bit of a scare. In the backup rotation, we already know that Yash is missing some time. Nash Jensen got hurt and waived. Chandler Zavala suffering an injury. We already know Xavier Legette had his takes there. So it's a scary situation right now. Xavier Woods missing some time. We already know Sam Franklin's out. I mean, you start plotting those guys out, and I think that's probably one of the worst things that could happen right now for the Carolina Panthers as they try to get into the season healthy. But it's still early. I still have faith in the coaching staff, and I think it's just going to be one of those situations where you got to have those other guys step up. But when we talk about the Jets joint practices, I closed that out. It does sound like a fantastic day from all reports. And I know Jets fans maybe turn it a little bit differently than Panthers fans, but to me, from what I saw from everyone that was there, and this is either people that probably aren't really hoping the Panthers succeed, all signs pointing to a successful day. That they went punch for punch, whatever you want to call it. That's not to say, I will add that the Jets did their stuff too, right? Jets still dominated. The Jets still performed and did what we would expect, having a Hall of Fame quarterback and a stout defense led by Robert Saleh. So I kind of summarize this now as we turn our attention to the game on Saturday. I would not expect many of the starters to play for the Panthers. I do think we may see that rotation of TMJ, Amir, David Moore. I mean, you got to trot some receivers out there, a lot more Jalen Coker. I think we see that rotation again. Now, when we talk about the wide receiver room and the depth that's there, I'm teetering between, I really think they carry 6. So at the bottom of that roster, you have Amir Smith-Marset, David Moore, and Terrace Marshall Jr. In my mind, I think if we're talking about this roster, that it's going to be tough to pick out that bottom one. And I keep day in and day out, I have David Moore and I have Terrace Marshall, and it's just this ever-changing like stack of evaluations that I have. But that'll be a storyline to watch for the Carolina Panthers. When we talk about quarterback play, I know Andy Dalton's slowly getting better. I don't know if he's going to be ready, but it could be a Jack Plummer, Jake Luton showdown again in the Carolinas. A lot of Mike Boone. Defensive side of the ball, like defensive-wise, just continuing to stay healthy. I still feel confident in what Evero can do with his defense and what he has there. Now, one thing I'll say, I feel much better coming out of that joint practice, not playing the starters than I did last week. Like I feel like we got enough reps in, and the coaches have talked about that. I'm not too concerned if we go out there tomorrow and they don't play a lot of the starters. Fine by me. Talking about the game itself, again, we're not really getting too deep into the weeds because there's not really a game plan. It's a preseason game. I doubt Aaron Rodgers plays. So you're kind of looking at a similar situation on the Jets. What I will say is the Jets steamrolled the Panthers in the preseason last year. And of course, it didn't count in the standings, but we got it rubbed in our face. It was a terrible outing for the Carolina Panthers coming off of the joint practice, supposed to be multiple practices, things like you never want to get your butt handed to you like that. So for me, I saw how bad the offense was this week in week one with a bunch of the backups. I'd love to see a win. Like, please, for the sake of the Carolinas, this is a home game, 7 o'clock. I don't think it's going to be crowded by any means in Uptown Charlotte, but for the love of the Carolina Panthers, can we get a win? I just want to see a win. Get a few touchdowns. Last game, I thought that we could do that. That was too much to ask. But I'm excited, folks. And hey, we're going to then turn our attention to Buffalo. I've got so much to catch you up on as we get into the weeds. I'm going to have an updated 53-man prediction as that alters a little bit with a lot of these injuries that are stacking up. Who's going to go where? Anyways, I think that's going to do it for today. Get it. I promised I'd get it out. I keep it short. So that will do it for today's episode. Please like, subscribe, follow where you get the show. And until next time, I will see y'all later.